This is the Dive Into Discovery podcast, where curiosity meets insight, and every conversation uncovers a new layer of understanding.
Welcome to today's Dive Into Discovery. We're your hosts, Theo and Alex. And today we're going to be looking at CRISPR,
Yeah, CRISPR.
a gene editing technology that's,
Well, it's making a lot of noise in the world.
yeah, it really is. It seems like it has the potential to change everything.
Absolutely. I mean, we're talking medicine, agriculture, even like the very essence of life as we know it, you know?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So for people who maybe aren't super familiar with gene editing, can you give us like a quick rundown of what CRISPR is and how it works?
Sure. So basically, CRISPR, at its heart, is a protein called Cas9. And this protein, it acts like a super precise pair of molecular scissors.
Okay.
And we can actually program it, like a computer, to find and target a specific DNA sequence. And once it finds its target, it makes a cut in the DNA. And we can use that cut to do all sorts of things, like disrupt a gene, insert a new gene, even like tweak a gene. It's incredible.
So it's like find and replace, but for DNA.
Exactly. You
Yes.
got it. And that's why it's so powerful. Think about it. We could cure genetic diseases. Sickle cell anemia, for instance.
Oh, wow. How would that work?
Well, sickle cell is caused by a single mutation in the gene that codes for hemoglobin. So using CRISPR, we could theoretically go in, correct that mutation, and allow the body to produce healthy hemoglobin.
And that would, like, cure the disease?
Potentially, yes.
That's amazing.
Right.
What other diseases could we treat this way?
Oh, tons. Cystic fibrosis, muscular dystrophy, Huntington's. The list goes on and on.
Wow, it's like we're on the verge of this whole new era of medicine where we can just rewrite our genetic code to get rid of diseases.
Yeah, it really is a game changer. And it's not just about treating diseases, it's about preventing them.
How so?
Well, think about gene editing in embryos. We call this germline editing, right? So the changes we make would be passed down to future generations. Imagine no more inherited diseases, poof, gone.
But is that messing with evolution?
Well, that's a big question, isn't it? The potential benefits are huge,
Yeah.
but it definitely raises some profound questions about what it means to be human. What's our role in all this? You know, shaping the future of our species, it's a lot to consider.
Yeah, for sure. So we're talking about actually changing the human genome permanently. What are some other ethical things we should be thinking about?
Well, one of the big concerns is unintended consequences. When we edit genes, there's always the risk of making what we call off-target edits, meaning we accidentally cut the DNA in the wrong place, and that could lead to, unexpected mutations or other unintended effects.
Are scientists working on making it safer?
Absolutely. Lots of research going on right now focused on improving the precision, the safety of CRISPR. They're even developing like new Cas9 proteins that are much more specific, less likely to make those off-target cuts. And of course, there's also a ton of work on delivery systems, making sure the CRISPR machinery gets to the right cells and tissues.
It sounds like we still have a ways to go before we can actually use CRISPR, safely and ethically.
Oh yeah, definitely. CRISPR is a powerful tool, no doubt. Huge potential. But we need to be very careful. It's about pushing the boundaries of science, but at the same time, safeguarding the well-being of individuals and, future generations. It's a delicate balance.
Right. So we've talked about human health, but I know CRISPR is also being used in agriculture.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, it's already being used to develop crops that are more resistant to pests, to diseases, more tolerant to drought even. And that has huge implications. We could revolutionize agriculture, tackle some of the world's biggest food challenges. It's pretty exciting.
So what's an example of how CRISPR is being used in agriculture right now?
Sure. A good example is the development of blight-resistant potatoes. So potatoes, right, they're a staple food for millions of people around the world, but they're susceptible to this devastating disease called late blight. It can wipe out whole crops.
Really?
But using CRISPR, scientists have edited the potato genome to make it resistant to this blight. And that could lead to bigger harvests, less reliance on pesticides.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Are they working on other things besides disease resistance?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they're using CRISPR to boost the nutritional content in crops, like, increasing vitamin A in rice that could help combat vitamin A deficiency. And they're also looking at improving drought tolerance, which is huge with climate change and water scarcity.
So CRISPR could help make sure we can feed a growing population.
Exactly. Now, it's not just medicine and agriculture, though. I mean, CRISPR is being used in so many different ways. For example, developing new diagnostic tools to detect diseases, engineering microbes to produce biofuels, even creating what we call gene drives.
Gene drives, what are those?
So gene drives, they're a really interesting and kind of controversial application of CRISPR. Basically, we edit genes in a way that ensures they get passed down to almost all offspring. It's like overriding the normal rules of inheritance.
Wow.
And we could use that to, say, edit mosquitoes that can't transmit malaria. We could potentially eradicate the disease.
That's amazing, but also kind of scary.
Yeah. I mean, gene drives have the power to change entire populations. And that brings up some big ecological concerns, like what happens if we wipe out a species or disrupt the balance of an ecosystem? These are things scientists are actively thinking about.
It seems like with CRISPR, there's always this tension between the incredible possibilities and the potential risks.
You hit the nail on the head. It really highlights the need for careful consideration, for ethical guidelines, and for open discussion. We need to make sure we're using this technology responsibly.
Speaking of risks, what about, CRISPR falling into the wrong hands?
It's a valid concern. We need to take it very seriously. I mean, the same technology that can cure diseases could be used to create harmful organisms or even, biological weapons. That's why it's so important to have regulations, to have international collaborations to prevent that kind of misuse.
This is not just like a science fiction thing. This is a real possibility.
Oh, absolutely. We can't ignore the potential for misuse. We have to be vigilant, proactive in creating safeguards and ensuring that this technology is only used for good.
It seems like we've just scratched the surface of CRISPR. It's clear it has the power to completely change our world, but it's also a technology that requires a lot of thought and careful management.
I couldn't agree more. It's a powerful reminder that with great power comes great responsibility. And as we continue to explore CRISPR, we need to be mindful of both its potential benefits and its potential risks to ensure that we use it wisely and ethically for the good of humanity and the planet. It's definitely a balancing act, but the potential, it's too big to ignore.
Yeah. So we've talked about gene editing in humans, in crops. Are there other organisms where CRISPR could make a difference?
Oh, absolutely. CRISPR is pretty versatile. We can use it on a whole range of organisms. I mean, researchers are using it to study gene function in animals, everything from fruit flies to mice.
So not just changing genes, but understanding how they work.
Exactly. We can manipulate genes with incredible precision and then see what happens. It gives us a whole new understanding of how genes work, how they affect development, disease, evolution, all of it.
That's incredible. Can you give us like a specific example of how they're using CRISPR in research?
Sure. Cancer research is a great example. Scientists are using CRISPR to introduce specific mutations into cells to see how they contribute to cancer development, and they can knock out genes that are thought to, help tumors grow or spread. It's helping us identify targets for new cancer therapies.
So we can learn about cancer and potentially find new treatments, all with CRISPR.
That's the beauty of it. It's a powerful tool for both basic research and for translating those findings into new treatments.
Are there other applications for CRISPR beyond, human health, agriculture, and research?
Oh, tons. One area that's really taking off is biomanufacturing. We can engineer microbes like bacteria and yeast to produce valuable compounds.
So instead of using traditional manufacturing, we can just program microbes to make what we need.
Exactly. It's more sustainable, more efficient. Think about it. Engineering yeast to produce insulin, no need for animal products. Or algae that can churn out biofuels. We could reduce our dependence on fossil fuels. The possibilities are, almost limitless.
It sounds like we're moving into this whole new era of biotechnology where we can harness the power of nature to create what we need in a much more sustainable way.
Yeah, it's a fundamental shift. And a great example of how CRISPR is bridging different fields, like biology, engineering, computer science, to find solutions to these big global challenges. We're really starting to see the convergence of disciplines.
So we've talked a lot about the potential benefits, but there's also the ethical side of things. Where do we draw the line when it comes to gene editing?
That's the million-dollar question, right? It's something society really needs to grapple with, especially as this technology keeps advancing. And one of the biggest areas of debate is germline editing, the idea of making changes that would be passed down to future generations.
Right, we talked about that a bit earlier. Can you maybe explain why that's so controversial?
Sure. So germline editing raises some serious ethical questions. First, there's the issue of consent. Future generations don't get a say in whether their genes are edited. And then there's the risk of unintended consequences, like we talked about before. We could make off-target edits that have unforeseen effects, and those effects could be passed down for generations. It's a big deal.
So it's not just about the individual, it's about like their children and their children's children.
Precisely. And then there are concerns about social justice. If germline editing becomes a reality, will it be accessible to everyone, or will it only be available to the wealthy? It could exacerbate existing inequalities, which is something we definitely don't want.
It's like opening Pandora's box.
Yeah.
I mean, who gets to decide what traits are desirable and which ones we should edit out? Where's the line between treating disease and enhancing human capabilities? It's a slippery slope.
It really is. There are no easy answers here. This is a conversation that needs to involve everyone, scientists, ethicists, policymakers, and of course the public. We need to weigh the potential benefits against the potential risks and make sure that, above all, this technology is used responsibly.
Yeah. I mean, it's clear CRISPR has the potential to completely change so many things, but it's also a tool that requires careful thought and, well, a lot of responsibility.
I couldn't agree more. It's a powerful reminder that scientific progress doesn't come without its challenges, and that we need to approach these new technologies with a sense of wonder, but also with caution.
It really is mind-blowing. This tiny protein, Cas9, could reshape, well, everything.
It really could. And it's not just the science. It's, like you said, all the ethical and societal stuff that comes with it. That's the really big stuff.
So we talked about misuse. Are there other concerns that people have about CRISPR?
Oh, yeah, definitely. One thing that comes up a lot is, will it make existing inequalities worse if gene editing becomes really common? Will everyone have access to it? Or will it just be for the rich? Could we end up with a genetic divide, the haves and the have-nots, but genetically?
That's a scary thought. We need to make sure everyone benefits, not just a few.
Right, absolutely. And that goes beyond just the science. It's about healthcare, economics, education, all these big societal issues. We need to make sure the benefits of CRISPR are shared fairly and that everyone gets a say in how it's developed and used.
It's a good reminder that science doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's all connected to the rest of the world.
Exactly. We can't just focus on the technical stuff. We have to think about the bigger picture, the context.
Something I've been thinking about, CRISPR and evolution. If we can edit genes, are we taking control of our own evolution?
That's a great question and a really complex one. I mean, we've been influencing evolution for a long time. Think about, selective breeding of plants and animals. CRISPR just gives us a much more precise tool to do it.
So it's not like a brand new thing, just a more powerful way.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. But the level of control we have now with CRISPR, it's unprecedented. And that raises all sorts of new questions. If we can enhance certain traits, are we directing evolution? And what does that mean for biodiversity, for the natural world? Big questions.
It's like something out of science fiction. Designing organisms, even ourselves, however we want.
It's a powerful idea. And it's a reminder that we need to be humble, We don't fully understand how life works, and we need to be careful about messing with it. There could be consequences we don't even anticipate.
It all comes back to that great power, great responsibility.
Exactly. We need to use CRISPR wisely, ethically, make sure it benefits everyone, not just a few, and that it doesn't harm the planet.
Well, I think we've covered a lot today, from the nuts and bolts of how CRISPR works to, well, all the amazing things it can do, and also the ethical stuff, which is really important. It's a game changer, but it's up to us to use it wisely.
I agree. We're just at the beginning of this CRISPR journey, and there's so much more to discover. But as we move forward, we need to have these conversations, involve everyone, and make sure we're using this technology for the right reasons.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into CRISPR. It's a fascinating field, and we hope this has made you want to learn even more about it.
What did you think of this week's episode? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to join us next time as we dive even deeper. And as always, stay curious, because you never know what discoveries are just around the corner.